Picture this. The most exclusive party in the galaxy, and humanity wasn't on the guest list. Imagine the biggest, most important meeting the universe has ever seen. The Galactic Conclave was happening for the first time in 300 years, and every major alien civilization was invited. We're talking about representatives from over 200 different species, all gathering on Axiom Prime, this absolutely stunning neutral world that looked like something from a fantasy movie. The planet itself was breathtaking. Crystal cities stretched across rolling hills, their surfaces catching the light from twin suns and throwing rainbows in every direction. Floating platforms drifted between towering spires that seemed to grow from the ground like metallic trees. The air itself shimmered with some kind of energy that made everything look magical. Rivers of liquid silver wound between the structures, and gardens filled with plants from 1,000 worlds created patches of impossible colors everywhere you looked. But here's the kicker. Getting invited to this cosmic gathering wasn't easy. The requirements were brutal. Your species had to have achieved interstellar travel through completely peaceful means. No wars, no conflicts, no messy history of blowing things up. You needed to maintain a perfectly stable society for at least 1,000 years straight. No revolutions, no civil wars, no major political upheavals. Basically, you had to prove you were the galactic equivalent of a well-behaved honor student who never caused trouble. Earth's humans? We failed every single requirement spectacularly. The aliens knew about us. All right, word travels fast in space, especially bad news. They called us those violent primates from Sol 3, and honestly, they weren't wrong. Our planet had a reputation that made other worlds nervous. Earth wasn't just dangerous. It was actively trying to murder everything that lived on it. Hurricanes that could level cities, earthquakes that split continents, volcanoes that blocked out the sun, and weather that could freeze you solid or cook you alive depending on the season. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was us. Humans had spent thousands of years fighting each other over everything imaginable. Wars over land, wars over resources, wars over ideas, wars over which invisible being in the sky was the right one to worship. Our governments rose and fell like waves on a beach. Democracy, monarchy, empire, revolution. We tried everything and usually ended up shooting at each other about it. To the refined alien civilizations, we were basically space barbarians. The galactic equivalent of that one neighbor who plays loud music at 3 a.m, leaves trash in their yard, and gets into screaming matches with their family on the front lawn. You know the type. Technically, they're part of the neighborhood, but you definitely don't invite them to your dinner parties. The whispers have been going around for years. Did you hear about the Sol 3 species? They actually thrive in conditions that would kill us in minutes. I heard they eat plants that are literally poisonous to most life forms. Apparently, they consider it entertainment to jump out of flying vehicles with nothing but fabric to slow their fall. The conclave members would shake their heads or flutter their appendages or vibrate their crystals in whatever way their species showed disbelief. How could any intelligent life form evolve on such a nightmare world? How could they possibly develop technology while spending so much time fighting each other? It didn't make sense to creatures who had evolved on peaceful paradise worlds where the biggest danger was mild seasonal weather changes. But now the conclave had a real crisis on their hands. Something called the Void Plague was spreading across the galaxy, literally eating entire star systems. Whole planets were just disappearing, leaving behind empty space where matter used to exist. It was the kind of threat that required every brilliant mind in the galaxy working together. They needed scientists, engineers, tacticians, and problem solvers from every advanced civilization, just not the human ones. Apparently, we were too unpredictable, too chaotic, too likely to suggest something crazy that might make the problem worse. Better to handle this crisis with calm, rational, civilized minds who thought things through properly. That's when human ships appeared on the edge of Axiom Prime's sensor grid. Nobody had invited us. Nobody had even told us the meeting was happening. But somehow, 3 human vessels had found their way to the most secret diplomatic gathering in galactic history. Security alerts started blaring across the crystal cities. Emergency protocols activated. Alien diplomats started panicking in 200 different languages. Captain Tom Bradley stepped off the lead ship, like he owned the place, wearing a confident grin that suggested he found the whole situation amusing. Behind him came Ambassador Kate Morrison, looking completely calm despite the fact that thousands of alien eyes were staring at her in shock, fear, and confusion. She carried herself with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from growing up on a world where everything wants to kill you. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. The elegant Etherians, these beautiful creatures made of living light, literally fled from humans. Our body heat was too intense, our smell too strong, our very presence too overwhelming for their delicate senses. The robot-like construct started running calculations about human survival rates on Earth and kept coming up with numbers that crashed their logic systems. But here's what none of them understood yet. Humans don't wait for invitations. We show up, we figure things out, and we get stuff done. The alien reaction was everything you'd expect from a bunch of civilized species meeting their first Deathworlders. Pure chaos. Picture walking into the fanciest restaurant in the world covered in mud, smelling like a gym and radiating heat like a furnace. That's basically what happened when humans entered the conclave chambers. The carefully orchestrated diplomatic atmosphere that had taken days to establish crumbled in minutes. The graceful Etherians were the first to lose it completely. These creatures were absolutely gorgeous. Imagine beings made of pure starlight, floating through the air like living aurora displays. They communicated through color patterns that shifted across their translucent bodies, creating conversations that looked like dancing rainbows. For 300 years, they'd been the gold standard of galactic elegance. But humans? We were like walking disasters to them. Our body temperature of 98.6 degrees might be normal to us. But to the Etherians, we were literally burning hot. They're used to the cool, regulated environments of their crystal ships where temperature never varies by more than a degree. Suddenly having these heat-generating mammals in the room was like someone turning on a bunch of space heaters during a formal dinner party. Then there were our pheromones. Humans constantly release chemical signals that other humans barely notice, but to species with sensitive chemical detection systems, we smell like a walking pharmacy explosion. The Etherians kept backing away from us like we were some kind of biological warfare experiment, their light patterns flashing distress signals in colors that probably translated to something like, "Make it stop." Even our breathing was too much for them. The way humans inhale and exhale, the slight moisture in our breath, the carbon dioxide we constantly pump out. To creatures who absorb energy directly from their environment, our whole respiratory system seemed unnecessarily violent and messy. The constructs had a completely different, but equally dramatic breakdown. These guys were basically the galaxy's ultimate logic machines, living computers housed in sleek metal bodies that could process information faster than entire civilizations. They prided themselves on being able to calculate solutions to any problem, no matter how complex. Then they tried to run probability models on human survival. Earth's conditions broke their minds. They'd input data about our planet's weather systems. Tornadoes that could level entire cities, hurricanes with winds that could throw cars around like toys, blizzards that could bury houses in hours. Then they'd add in the animals. Bears that had crushed skulls with their paws, big cats that hunted for sport, tiny insects whose bites could kill you in minutes, ocean creatures with enough venom to drop an elephant. But that wasn't even the worst part for their circuits. The worst part was discovering that humans not only survived all of this, but actually decided we were the dominant species. The constructs kept running the same calculations over and over, getting results that basically said impossible in flashing red letters across their visual displays. One construct was overheard muttering in binary code, which roughly translated to does not compute, system error. How do they still exist? Meanwhile, while the aliens were having their respective meltdowns, Dr. Mike Patterson and his human team were doing what humans do best, completely ignoring the social chaos and diving straight into the actual problem. The Void Plague data was spread across massive holographic displays throughout the conclave chambers. Most alien scientists were approaching it with the kind of careful reverence you'd use when handling ancient artifacts. They'd formed committees to study the philosophical implications of matter ceasing to exist. They were drafting proposals for decade-long research initiatives. They were debating the ethical considerations of even studying something so dangerous. Mike took one look at the data and started treating it like the world's most interesting crossword puzzle. "Hey, guys, check this out," he called his team, pointing at readings from a consumed star system. "The energy patterns here don't match what we'd expect from normal matter dissolution. It's almost like the space itself is being rewritten." His colleague, Dr. Amy Cross, was practically vibrating with excitement as she pulled up comparative data. "And look at these gravitational anomalies. The math suggests something is actively maintaining these void zones, not just creating them." The aliens watched in growing horror as the humans started suggesting experiments that made their diplomatic translators malfunction. Questions like, what happens if we send a probe directly into the center of a void zone? And has anyone tried introducing control matter streams to see how the effect spreads? To the civilized species of the Conclave, the void plague represented an existential threat that required careful study, extensive debate, and consensus building among all member species. They wanted to understand its philosophical implications, its place in cosmic order, its potential meaning for the universe's future. They planned to spend years, maybe decades, developing the perfect response through diplomatic channels and careful scientific inquiry. To humans, it was just another problem that needed solving, preferably before it killed everyone. When Mike stood up in the middle of a formal philosophical debate about the nature of existence and cheerfully announced that his team was ready to volunteer for direct investigation of a void-touch system, the silence in the chamber was deafening. The Conclave faced an uncomfortable truth. Maybe their civilization had become too safe, too cautious, too removed from the kind of brutal reality that actually gets things done. The Koros system was basically hell with a science degree. Imagine the worst nightmare you can think of, then multiply it by the kind of cosmic horror that makes scientists wake up in cold sweats. 3 entire planets have been consumed by the void plague. But here's the thing that made everyone's brain hurt. They weren't destroyed or blown up or even disintegrated. They were just gone. Not a trace of debris. Not a single atom floating around where they used to be. Just empty space where billions of years of planetary formation had suddenly decided to stop existing. The void zones themselves defied every law of physics anyone had ever discovered. Picture looking at space through a telescope and seeing areas where your eyes just couldn't focus, where light seemed to bend around something that wasn't there. Scientists try to describe it as localized reality failure, but honestly, that was just fancy talk for we have no idea what we're looking at, and it's terrifying. The gravitational readings from the system made no sense either. Massive objects that weren't there were still somehow affecting the space around them. Ships passing to the outer edges of the system reported their instruments going haywire, showing impossible readings that suggested matter and energy were following rules that hadn't been invented yet. While alien scientists observed from what they considered a safe distance, about 50 light-years away, which tells you everything you need to know about how scared they were, Captain Lucy Webb piloted her ship straight into the nightmare. The alien observers had set up monitoring stations that were basically the galactic equivalent of watching a horror movie through your fingers. They had every sensor imaginable pointed at the Koros system, but from a distance that would let them run away really fast if things went wrong. "Control! This is defiance!" Lucy's voice crackled over the communication system, already distorted by the weird physics of the void zones. "We're seeing some wild gravitational readings here. It's like space is having a tantrum and decided to throw the rule book out the window." Her crew treated the whole mission like they were heading out for an extreme sports weekend, instead of potentially sailing into a cosmic meat grinder. These were people who grew up on a planet where nature regularly tried to kill them, so flying into impossible space phenomena was just Tuesday for them. Engineer Ben Torres was actually laughing as alarms blared throughout the ship, and he rerouted power around systems that were failing in ways that shouldn't have been possible. "Well, that's new," he'd say cheerfully as another piece of equipment started doing things it wasn't designed to do. The navigation computer just tried to plot a course through the fourth dimension. Dr. Amy Cross was collecting samples from the edge of nothingness itself with the kind of enthusiasm most people reserve for finding $20 in an old jacket pocket. She'd set up collection devices right at the boundary where normal space met the void zones, gathering data that was making computers on the ship question their own existence. The alien observers watching from their safe distance were losing their collective minds. The Etherians, those beautiful beings of living light, were practically weeping electromagnetic tears. Their color patterns kept flashing distress signals that roughly translated to, "Why are they doing this? Why are they choosing to die?" They convinced themselves they were watching an entire species commit elaborate suicide. In their experience, any intelligent life form would take one look at the Karas system and immediately head in the opposite direction at maximum speed. The idea that humans would voluntarily fly into it was like watching someone decide to juggle live grenades for fun. The constructs were having their own digital breakdown. Their probability calculations kept coming back with results that flashed impossible in bright red text across their displays. They'd run simulation after simulation, try to figure out how human ships could even exist in the void zones, let alone function well enough to collect scientific data. But humans were having the time of their lives. "Hey, Doc." Ben called out as the ship shuddered through another gravity wave that should have torn apart. "Remember that time we went storm chasing in Kansas and drove straight into that F4 tornado?" "This is way better," Amy replied, sealing another sample container that contained readings from space where the laws of physics had apparently taken a vacation. "Kansas tornadoes don't rewrite the fundamental nature reality while you're watching." The crew was treating impossible cosmic phenomena like an amusement park ride. When their instruments detected matter that existed and didn't exist at the same time, they made jokes about quantum mechanics. When the ship's hull started experiencing temporal distortions that made parts of it age backward, they took bets on whether they'd arrive at their destination before they left. That's when they made the discovery that changed everything. Deep in the heart of the void zones, hidden in the space where 3 planets used to exist, Amy's sensors picked up something that made her stop joking around. Energy signatures that were artificial. Patterns that showed intelligence behind the chaos. The void plague wasn't a natural disaster at all. It wasn't some cosmic disease or random universal malfunction. It was a weapon. Or rather, it was the aftermath of a weapon that had gone catastrophically wrong. Some ancient civilization had tried to harness dark matter and entropy itself, attempting to create the ultimate tool of destruction. Instead, they'd created something that consumed reality itself, including them. As the human data streamed back to the terrified conclave, one thing became crystal clear. These Deathworlders weren't just surviving in conditions that would kill anyone else. They were thriving, adapting, pushing deeper into the anomaly than any sane species would dare. Because sanity, as it turns out, is overrated when the universe is ending. Dr. Mike Patterson's solution was so perfectly human that it made the aliens question everything they thought they knew about problem solving. Picture this. You're in the fanciest conference room in the galaxy, surrounded by the most advanced civilizations the universe has ever produced, all staring at data that shows reality itself is unraveling. These beings have spent thousands of years developing careful, methodical approaches to every challenge. They believe in committees, extensive research, and solutions that take decades to implement safely. Then this guy from Earth stands up and basically says, "Let's blow it up, but really carefully." "So here's the thing," Mike explained to a room full of horrified diplomatic representatives, gesturing at the holographic displays, showing void zones spreading across the galaxy. "We can't cure this and we can't contain it, but we can absolutely turn it against itself." The silence that followed was the kind you get when someone suggests something so crazy that everyone's brain needs a moment to process it. You could practically hear the alien equivalent of jaws dropping across 200 different species. Mike continued, completely unbothered by the stunned stares. The ancient civilization's weapon created self-sustaining fields of weaponized entropy. Think of it like a fire that feeds on everything around it, including the air it needs to burn. But entropy, by its very nature, is unstable. It's chaos. And here's the beautiful part. If you introduce the right kind of control disorder into a chaotic system, the whole thing can collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. The plan was elegant in its audacity. Instead of trying to build walls around the void zones or finding some way to heal the damaged space, humans wanted to create carefully calculated chaos bombs. They developed a way to generate controlled entropic fields that would interfere with the existing void zones, basically making them fight each other until they canceled out. It was like fighting fire with fire, except the fire was a fundamental breakdown of reality, and the stakes were the continued existence of the universe. The alien response was immediate and completely predictable. Absolutely not, declared the Zephyrian representative, their crystalline form literally vibrating with distress. The Zephyrians were known for their mathematical precision. They planned everything down to the smallest detail and never took unnecessary risks. To them, Mike's plan was like suggesting they solve a delicate surgery problem by hitting the patient with a hammer. The Zephyrians' crystalline bodies shifted through colors that indicated extreme anxiety as they continued. The risk calculations are beyond acceptable parameters. We're talking about deliberately introducing more chaos into a system that's already destroying everything it touches. This is madness. Other species quickly joined the chorus of objections. The Helians, beings of pure energy who valued harmony above all else, flickered with distress patterns. This approach contradicts every principle of safe scientific methodology, their spokesperson pulsed. We should be seeking to restore balance, not create more imbalance. The ancient mind-seers, being so old they remembered when the galaxy was young and stars were still learning how to shine properly, suggested what they always suggested when faced with impossible problems: philosophical acceptance. Perhaps, their spokesperson intoned in a voice that sounded like whispers on the edge of time, this is simply the universe's natural progression toward entropy. All things must end eventually. We should prepare for evacuation and preserve what we can of our civilizations rather than risk making the situation worse. The mind-seers had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a cosmic shore. To them, the void plague might just be another natural cycle, something to be endured rather than fought. Their solution was basically cosmic resignation. Pack up what you can carry and find somewhere else to live. Only the humans were talking about fighting back. Look, Captain Tom Bradley said, leaning forward in his chair like he was discussing weekend barbecue plans instead of potentially catastrophic galactic intervention. Running away just means this thing gets stronger while we get weaker. Eventually, there won't be anywhere left to run to. The room erupted into what could only be described as polite chaos. Species that communicated through color changes were flashing emergency patterns. Others were making sounds that the translation systems couldn't handle. The constructs were running calculation after calculation, their metal bodies heating up from the processing load. Their simulations painted a terrifying picture. Potential outcomes range from catastrophic failure to complete universal collapse. Most scenarios ended with humans accidentally making the void plague worse, spreading it faster, or creating new types of reality-destroying phenomena that would make the original problem look like a minor inconvenience. But the humans had run their own simulations using Earth's most advanced computers, and they'd found something the aliens missed. Hidden in the chaos of probability was a narrow thread where controlled chaos could cascade to the entropic fields, causing them to destabilize and collapse in on themselves. The chances of success? About 12%. The chances of making everything infinitely worse? 88%. Those were terrible odds by any reasonable standard. No sane civilization would bet the universe on a 12% chance of success. But then the universe decided to make the choice for them. Emergency alerts started blaring through the conclave chambers. The research station at Kepler 442, which had been monitoring a distant void zone from what everyone thought was a safe distance, was gone. Not destroyed over weeks as predicted, but consumed in mere hours. The void plague was accelerating. Suddenly, the choice wasn't between a safe solution and a risky one. It was between certain doom and improbable salvation. And for the first time in their civilized history, they chose to roll the dice with the crazy primates from the death world. When you spent millions of years evolving in paradise, you forget what it means to fight for survival. Think about it this way. Imagine growing up in the perfect house where nothing ever breaks. The weather's always just right, and your biggest problem is deciding what to have for dinner. Now imagine your neighbor grew up in a house where the roof leaked, the furnace exploded regularly, wild animals wandered to the backyard trying to eat the family dog, and every meal was a gamble between nutrition and food poisoning. When a real crisis hits, which neighbor do you want on your side? The alien species of the conclave had developed on worlds that were basically cosmic vacation resorts. Take the Etherians, for example. Their home planet had weather so stable that temperature varied by less than 2 degrees across the entire surface. Rain fell on a precise schedule. The most dangerous predator was something roughly equivalent to a particularly aggressive butterfly. The Zephyrians evolved on a world where resources were so abundant that scarcity was literally a foreign concept. Their biggest evolutionary pressure was learning to cooperate more efficiently to share the endless bounty their planet provided. Competition was unnecessary when there was always more than enough for everyone. Even the ancient mind-seers came from a galaxy where cosmic disasters happened so rarely that they were considered philosophical thought experiments rather than actual survival challenges. They'd built their entire civilization around the idea that problems could be solved through careful thought and patient deliberation because they'd never faced anything that required immediate action. These species have built beautiful civilizations based on consensus, careful planning, and avoiding unnecessary risks. Their solution to any problem was to form a committee, study it for a few decades, build consensus among all stakeholders, and implement changes gradually over several generations. Humans? We came from a world that was actively trying to murder us every single day. Earth wasn't just dangerous, it was creatively dangerous. Our planet threw hurricanes that could level entire cities, earthquakes that split continents, volcanoes that blocked out the sun for years, and ice ages that forced entire species to evolve or die. And that was just the weather. Then there were the animals. Everything from tiny insects whose bites could drop a full-grown human in minutes to massive predators that saw us as convenient snacks. We shared our world with creatures that could crush our skulls, inject us with enough venom to kill elephants, or simply eat us alive starting from the feet up. But here's the thing that broke the alien understanding. We didn't just survive all this. We thrived. We turned every disaster into an opportunity to get stronger, smarter, and more adaptable. Ice Age? Time to invent better shelter and clothing. Predators trying to eat us? Let's domesticate the friendly ones and hunt the dangerous ones. Poisonous plants everywhere? Perfect. Let's figure out which ones make good medicine. We learned to adapt, take risks, and turn disasters into opportunities because that's what you do when your planet throws everything it has at you like it's personally offended by your existence. As human ships dove into void plague epicenters across the galaxy, the watching aliens finally understood why evolution had shaped us the way it did. Captain Jack Miller's voice came through the communication system from the center of a collapsing entropic field, calm as if he was reporting weather conditions. Control, we're showing cascade failure in the entropy matrix. The field's eating itself. Repeat, the field is consuming its own structure. The aliens watching from their monitoring stations couldn't believe what they were seeing. The void zones were imploding, collapsing in on themselves as the control chaos fields interfered with their structure. It was like watching a house of cards fall down, except each card was a fundamental force of reality. Dr. Will Thompson, monitoring from another void zone entirely, was practically whooping with excitement over the calm. The control chaos is working. We're seeing systematic collapse across 17 different dimensional matrices. It's like watching dominoes fall, except the dominoes are made of pure entropy. The human crews scattered across dozens of star systems were reporting the same thing. The void plague wasn't just stopping, it was reversing itself. The weaponized entropy was turning inward, consuming the very weapon that had created like some kind of cosmic Ouroboros. But here's where things got really interesting. As the void zones collapsed, they left behind regions of space with properties that shouldn't have existed. Areas where the laws of physics had been rewritten during the collapse, creating pockets of reality that would revolutionize galactic technology for thousands of years. The Etherians watched in stunned silence as humans turned a universe-ending disaster into the greatest scientific discovery in galactic history. The construct's probability calculations kept showing results that their logic systems refused to accept. The Mindseers, who had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, admitted they'd never seen anything like it. Humanity had done what they'd always done, took an impossible situation, and somehow made it better than it was before. When it was over, when the last void zone had collapsed and the galaxy was safe again, Ambassador Kate Morrison stood before the assembled representatives with that same confident smile she'd worn when she first stepped off her uninvited ship. The silence in the conclave chambers was profound. 200 species that had doubted humanity's worth were now staring at the beings who had just saved the universe using a plan that should have destroyed it. So, Kate said, looking around the room like she was addressing old friends. About that formal invitation to join the conclave, the Etherian speaker, still glowing with residual amazement, began to draft humanity's official welcome to galactic civilization. Their light patterns shifted to colors that indicated respect, admiration, and just a touch of fear. Kate just laughed. Thanks, but we've never been big on waiting for invitations, anyway. We prefer to make our own. And that's how the Deathworlders saved the galaxy and still managed to show up fashionably late to their own welcome party.